Hello. So in this video, I wanted to talk about how we actually specific kind of like get accents. So what is an accent? Accent is just accent. It's different from what we're used to, right? Um, but it has a lot to do with, first of all, what we believe it to be. Like, is it bad? Is it good? Is it this, that? So starts with having that, what I said in a previous video, is the mindset, okay, or rather the mindset, feel set, sort of being set of it all. What do I mean by that? It's basically your wholeness, like how you really perceive it from inside and out. Let's go through the process itself. And it has a lot to do with, first of all, the belief that the reason we think we have an accent is similar to believing that there's a problem. If we don't see it that there's a problem, then there's no problem. In other words, it's a part of a training process. What the mind puts in, rather the conscious, what we tell the conscious, what we think about the conscious, goes into the subconscious. The subconscious doesn't know whether what you're believing is what. It's that frequency. It's that thing. It's a belief. So it's a belief is a very strong and powerful thing. It's frequency. It's energy, right? Now, for those people who don't believe in that stuff, that doesn't matter. It's what it is. What you believe in becomes your reality. So therefore, any sort of belief you have specifically would say you believe that the goal is always what you're focusing on and not the journey, you're forgetting to have fun, right? We have this belief everywhere in the world where it's like it's all about perfection over path, rushing things, like, ever had those experiences when someone is in, what do you call this, rushing towards, like, someone driving, you're driving, and someone just like speeding, but eventually when you get to the elevator, there's this commercial. They get to the same elevator at the same time, exactly the same time anyways. So the person who was rushing basically wasted energy, wasted time doing all those things, getting worried, right? So overusing the conscious, overthinking it, and it became this sort of belief that, or rather it became a sort of a growing belief as they grew older. Maybe it's like, oh, I need to rush this, I need to perfect this, I need to do this, I need to do this, because we believe that that's what we need to do from based on what others think of us or what we think of ourselves. It's not really what others think of you. You really don't have control of that. But what we have control of is what we think about ourselves, what we believe in ourselves, what we do, what we feel, what we say, all that stuff. So rushing. It's not kind of like a clogged artery, and you're rushing things, and you're just like, this is why we get into panic attacks. We get into have all these things. Doesn't matter. The point is, when we're rushing, when we're trying to be perfect, when we're trying to do this, has a lot to do with that assumption that it's, I need to do this because we think that that's what this is. So what I say by assumption here is, for example, when we feel we want to get into a language because we're so excited, the intention is great, you want to learn a language, you want to get this, you want to learn, you get excited, but it gets kind of like, I guess, overshadowed by this behavior that we've developed and we've gotten used to. It's become unconscious that assumption is more important than attention to it. What I mean by that is, instead of it allowing it to take process on its own, putting in the work and then trusting it and releasing all that stuff to the moment, then it becomes this sort of ongoing thing. And it also ties into our self-worth. It's basically this whole thing, of this whole picture of self-perception, self-thought, like what we perceive ourselves to be, what we believe ourselves to be. So it comes down to belief. Another factor is system conditionedness, so like external factors. So that, remember that belief is a thought that repeats itself. Grading systems, levels, being the best, being top, competition, that sort of unhealthy ego that I wrote down here, fears the role it's supposed to play and wants other things that aren't there, so it fabricates separation. What that means is ego is this part of ourselves that's saying, I am more important, I am less important. It's neither present, it's just better or worse. There's always this polarity. This is what people refer to as the binary. It's like this binary thought, this belief that we are don't have to be connected like F you universe, F you God, F you religion. It all then it goes down to blaming. It goes on, and then it cycles. It recycles. It's very unhealthy. So this ties into languages, particularly like this one little thing that is language learning. Right? We've come to believe that writing comes before reading, before speaking, before listening. That creates a lot of tension and perfectionism in us. This belief again goes back to that. So basically, we've forgotten. And of course, this thing that's been happening, it becomes sort of the subconscious is no longer there. There's a disconnect between the conscious and when we get information, and then there's a force here, and then it becomes like, oh, the subconscious goes, okay, so that's what you want. Okay, so we'll do it that way. You want to be tense, you want to be perfect, you want to be this. Okay, we'll go with that. And then it just goes with what we think it is, what we tell it to be, what we tell it to do, what we tell it to feel, all that stuff. It becomes this habit. Right? Habits are part of the subconscious process as well. Emotions, habits, fluency, automaticity, all that stuff, understanding. But when there's a disconnect, what happens is that it becomes unconscious. So the process is changing the belief. How do we change the belief? At least for me, what I did was I started slowing down. I started becoming more like, what am I doing? I wasn't happy with the process of just language learning, going through grammar books, translation, all these things. It's very analytical, and it was just like this one part of the bigger picture. It's like I was taking a part of that and just focusing on this one thing. It's kind of like saying, I only like you as a friend because of this. That's not loving. That's not loving to ourselves. That's not loving to other people. It's not connected. We are disconnected. So I started doing that where I just like slowed down, started not listening to other people. I changed the belief, and it was a gradual process. I'm still learning through it. I'm still going through it. So I started practicing and feeling kind of what I used to do back in high school, where I would just listen, literally like not listening, but like allowing. So, but as years passed, I started to realize like, wait, I need to ground myself, right? Because by grounding myself, I take myself back to the body. So I did stuff like with gratitude stuff, law of attraction, Wim Hof method, yoga, any of those kind of things that made me realize and appreciate more of not only myself, but what I have already right now, right? So I got back into the body, and I got into this sort of awareness that when we're not allowing, so therefore we're rushing, we're perfecting all those things, the body manifests that belief. It's a very subtle thing, but it's very powerful. Subtlety actually has power over not subtle. I don't know if that makes sense. So slowing down and sensing, feeling vibration, seeing the blades of the fan when you put it on slow motion, it's kind of like you're stopping time. So I had to change my belief. I had to change all that stuff. And then I changed my intention and said, okay, well, how am I going to do this? I need to practice this somehow. Well, the intention was just make time for it, but rather allow for it. Make time for it by allowing for time. So I scheduled it, and that's it. I said, this is my schedule. Right? Sometimes some people will see it as like, this is my schedule, and they say, I don't have time. Well, really be realistic and list down how much time do you really have per day. Go with that. Start with that. Okay? So I changed the intention from rushing, going fast, going right away, because when you're rushing things, it's kind of like that's combustion. That's like explosion. When you're rushing something, if you try to turn on the car and you just rev it up and you go, and just go, what happens? Destruction. It's combustion. It's destructive nature. It's aggressive. It's not assertive. It's not proactive. Okay. So I went from that to allowing to just accelerating. I'll give you an example of like how Neptune, like if you look at how old our solar system is, like Neptune, the winds in Neptunes are freaking fast. But how did that get there? Did they just go like, oh, I'm gonna be fast like this? No, it's not. Okay, not to be insulting, but really that's what it is, right? We have to trust our inner nature, and I mean this with all the love. Okay, You have to trust your nature. Trust going from within. Then I had to change the habits. I had to change my habit. I had to practice listening more, listening more, listening more. Really slowing down. So I went back to what I used to do back when I was younger, even back in university, about 10 years ago. Passive listening. Yeah, passive listening. Being passive. Yes, 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 yes. So I went with fun. I looked for that song and just kind of like inspired me, or things that made me feel good, made me feel good. I felt love, right? So I'll give you an example here. Actually, I'm going to go into the website here. You remember this guy who people kind of like laughed at, made fun of? He was following his inner voice. He was following that sort of feeling that's like, I'm just going to have fun. So he sang this out. He said, "That's my body." Who cares? He has an accent, but he still enjoyed it, right? That's the whole point. Joy is the point. So I used to do this too. Like there's this one song I know, "Je vecht nooit alleen." It's in Dutch. I love this song. It's a very motivational song. I used to, I still do sometimes listen to this song, right? By 이승환, "천년을 위한 미련," right? Oh, look, he doesn't have an accent. Or he has a bit of an accent, but it's very minimal. How did I do that? Because of listening. It's really about listening. So enjoy the song, enjoy the moment, enjoy the process. Another example is this one song, like Yamas Dance. They played it in the Big Fat Greek Wedding #2. Awesome. Got me to like really, really love Greek. Because it's not just the movie itself, it's about motivation that I noticed that I was starting to build in myself. It was self-motivation rather than external motivation. Technically, this is external motivation, but yeah. And then, of course, this one. I love this song by Sarah Bareilles. And it's a song. Just go with it. Right? Songs, I had a session earlier, and I was telling like this guy, he's from Ukraine, and I was telling him, the reason I encourage songs a lot is not because of the song itself, but because it's a motivating factor. Music moves you, but through music, it's kind of like almost like a starting point. And then you go from there and say, being more in touch with those emotions, being aware of it rather than, even if it's like I'm being in the emotion, I'm feeling it, that will still help because it's connected to acquisition, it's connected to intuition, it's connected to absorbing. It's part of the whole picture. Allow this process to happen through songs, music, pieces, songs, whatever. Radio stations and podcasts can be sort of like additional to that too. That's more like the sound itself. But when you start to really get into the emotion, you start to really enjoy. Remember, the key is joy. Then that's when it starts to become, yeah, you'll feel it. Anyways, okay. So I started practicing listening, right? So I had fun just like really being aligned with my childlikeness. I started to trust things more, especially in like the past few years. Yeah, when going back to that, absolutely. Started to have a healthier ego and to play, I had a role to play and I was just trusting it. I was like allowing the process to happen. So whether it's like something older, ongoing, right? You want to develop want to have good habits, basically. You're aware of this, okay. Rather than reactive, you want to be proactive, so to speak, basically. Allowing nature to do its work. So as we go through the whole story, it's like the flow of the river. Let it happen. You pick up the pieces along the river, right? You'll see. But to be part of the process, right? So you'll pick up pieces that build your own puzzle. It's your story. It's your experience. So my challenge for you guys is to try a song you've never heard before. Feel what it feels like. Do you feel joy in the sounds, in the chord progressions, and all that stuff? In the way they're describing in the picture, in the video, whatever? Do you feel joy? Do you feel like a childlikeness? If you do, great. Go with that. Okay? So I'll see you guys later. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.